Oh, no, I don't have time. We're going to start class now. Okay, get in here. Gotta get started.
No, honey. No, I mean, I don't know. Certain house.
Yo! About to power up.
I'll take it. I'm putting you $1 next week for your pencil. I'll buy you a copy.
Probably did the right thing.
Find any.
I can't either. I moved up 5 feet. Next week, if I can't see, I'm going to move up another 5 feet. No, because then you got to like this. With my computer, it caused me all the problems last year. You're going to come watch it. Yeah, no, I want to jump off somebody else's. We can throw it underneath this. Okay, come on, we're running late. Let's get started. I'm going to have to hold you until 5 o'clock.
Happy hour starts at 4:30.
5 o'clock somewhere.
You slide in.
You see a memo in
You didn't find it.
It's there. I heard it.
Just be careful you don't break your... Yeah, just lay it right there.
That's gonna cost me another
Use it if you're not listening. And it's in there. Your argument was you didn't say it. His argument was you did.
Yeah, show me that exact copy.
I'll do it as well. Hopefully we can use the same ones that we make.
This semester I'm actually losing weight to get on time to eat. Pardon me. I'm sorry. I'm not talking to you, I know it's something.
Yes.
Listen, be careful.
Thank you. What do you need?
All right, everybody got a handout? Okie dokie. Let's get this show on the road. Time's a leaving. All right. So, today, we are going to focus on the front door, back door approach for basically coming up with either the value of the property or the rental rate associated with the property. All right? And then we're also going to do a little quickie pro forma and get all that done. So that is our objective. Now let's just talk about what these two different little approaches are. This is, as I like to refer to it, as simple financial feasibility analysis, SFFA.
Oh, I like that.
And it is an approach that's been around for at least 30 odd years or more in terms of kind of how to look at a project from two different directions, okay? The front door approach, you start out with a handful of givens about what you paid for the property in terms of the land, and then you add in your construction cost, and then you work toward what would be the rent required on a per square foot basis that you would need to charge for this property in order to fulfill basically all of your financial obligations and ultimately kind of give you at least a baseline for feasibility, okay? This is what I would call kind of like the back of the envelope, just kind of quick and dirty analysis to get a sense for whether a project is going to sort of pass the smell test of is it worth it, is it not worth it, should I do it, should I not do it, should I at least give it a second look. And so that is one direction, okay? The front door approach, as I said, you start out with the site cost and the construction cost and work toward the rent required per square foot. Now, the other approach, which is just the opposite, is you start out, and it's called the backdoor approach, you start out with what effectively your rental rate is per square foot, and then you work toward what is the maximum amount you could potentially spend on this property in terms of construction costs and land costs. Does that make sense? So it's two different ways of looking at kind of the same sort of thing. Because sometimes, if you think about it like this, as a developer, you're going out there and in some cases, you're simply saying, all right, I can buy this land for this price. I can build a building on that piece of land for this price. All right, I can get financing at this sort of interest rate for this sort of a term. I expect our occupancies to be this. I expect our expenses to be this. And voila, there's the rental rate that I need to charge in order for this project to make sense to me. Okay, and then what you would do is, well, whatever rental rate that this would spit out, then you would say, all right, if this one shot out a required rental rate of $15 a square foot, and the market is actually at maybe $18 a square foot, then that should tell you, okay, that's good. We've got some wiggle room there, because if the market is at 18 and you only need 15 to basically break even, you've got a $3 per square foot cushion. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Now, if the market were at, let's say, 12, and you're saying you need to get 15, then you pretty much would throw this project out the door, or you would relook at the numbers and see if you can maybe kind of tweak things a little bit and see if you get anywhere close to that. But the reality is, if you're not meeting, you know, if the market rental rate is not meeting what your cost, you know, would be, it doesn't make any sense for you to do it, okay? Now, the flip side to this is, we're just saying, you would sort of start off with, what is the market rental rate? For apartments, for office space, for industrial, doesn't really matter. And then you basically say, okay, if that's the market rental rate, then we work down and we sort of see, all right, with construction cost, and then whatever's left over is how much we can pay for the land, all right? That's the way to approach it, okay? Make sense? Conceptually. Okay, now we're gonna do the numbers, but conceptually, that's all I'm trying to get your head around is what we're trying to do. Okay. Strangely enough, I actually just got an email about this yesterday. So, you know, as I've told you all, and you know, you obviously are aware that we have the videos out there, you know, in terms of YouTube videos. Since we started posting these, you know, about four and a half years ago, I probably get at least 1 or 2 inquiries a month from random people across the world, okay? The most recent one was a guy yesterday from Westchester, I guess it's Massachusetts or whatever, that basically said, hey, you know, I'm interested in commercial real estate, and I saw, you know, your video lecture, and I was wondering if you could send me this simple financial feasibility analysis model. And I get that happening all the time, not only with this one, but with several of the others. But the interesting thing about it is that, you know, once again, we don't advertise any of this, but it's just out there and it's available, and people are obviously, you know, interested enough to sometimes, you know, question it, because it's a really neat, simple, straightforward model to kind of get at the answer to some of these questions. Okay, so what I've given you is a handout, and the handout has kind of the work through numbers, all right? Bo, do you have one? No. Okay, come back late. All right. Oops, okay. So, let's just start this thing off here. All right, so the inputs that we've got are all these green cells, all right? 250,000, 750,000, loan to value 80%. We're going to talk about each of these here in just a second. Let's go ahead and pop in all the given pieces of information. Okay, so for the top half of the spreadsheet, don't worry about the bottom half yet. Let's just go ahead and focus on the top half. All right, so here are the inputs. I just put in the cells that, once again, are green, put in the information that's given to you here on the sheet. So those are let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pieces of information. 9 variables that basically will be used to now populate the model and to solve for what we're searching for, which is the rent required per square foot. Okay, does everybody understand that? Now, all of these pieces, for the most part, are fairly easy to get our hands on. All right, we start off here at the top. Let's just start with that one. Site acquisition cost, $250,000. What does that include? Okay, that's going to include your land cost. It's also going to include any sort of site prep work that you need to do in terms of clearing off the land, in terms of getting the land ready for development. So this may also include, you know, some of the landscaping costs, may include getting utilities run to the site, that sort of thing. Okay, does it make sense? Okay. Well, these are kind of Texas prices. Okay. That was probably the biggest thing for me personally to get my head around when I moved here 5 years ago from Texas is, in Texas, for the most part, land is dirt cheap. You know, here,
no. You don't have any zoning.
No,
that's why.
Well, no. Houston, they don't have zoning, but almost every other city in Texas does have zoning. But it's just part of it is we don't have all of the restrictions that you have here in terms of environmental constraints and obviously, you know, the locational constraints of being able to expand out into the marshes. Well, we just have a bunch of, you know, raw land that, you know, is almost, you know, limitless. But it's just sometimes hard to get my head around that the land cost can be such a large percentage. But anyway, so land cost and site acquisition cost, 250 grand. And then we're saying that the construction cost to build this, whatever this facility is going to be $750,000. So our total expected development cost is going to be those two added together. So that's going to be the first thing you're going to pop into your model here, just to add those two numbers together. Now, one of the things I did with this model to keep things almost, it's just bulletproof, is that you go through here on the left-hand side and you see actually what you have to do, okay, in terms of adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing, okay? So, that's pretty much all it is. So, for this first one, we're just going to add those two cells together. So you should get $1 million, okay, as your total expected development cost. Okay, everybody good with that? Yeah. Okay. Now, if I'm moving too slow, you're more than welcome to go as fast as you can and finish it up. All right. So the next one that we come down to that we need to fill in is what is our permanent mortgage going to be? Well, our permanent mortgage is going to be based on 80% loan to value ratio off of the $1 million. So all you're really going to do is take that $1 million, multiply it by 80%, so you should get $800,000. Here is your loan amount. Okay, everybody good with that? Okay. Okay. All right. So far, so good. Okay. All right. Now, here we're going to pop in our annualized mortgage constant, all right, for this loan at a 5% interest rate for 15 years. Now, if you remember from this morning, we talked about mortgage constants. Basically, what you're going to do, you're going to start off 12 payments per year. And in this case, we've got 5% as our interest rate. 15 years as our term. We put in $1 as the loan amount, or the present value. We solve for the payment. And then once we get that, then we're going to annualize it. We're going to multiply that by 12. And that's going to give us our annualized mortgage constant. Okay. This gives us our monthly mortgage constant. Yeah. So let's just do that real quick. Now, obviously, we're going to have Excel calculator for us, but I just want to show you on the calculator real quickly. Okay, we got 0.0079073 blah 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 blah. Okay, times 12. We have 0.09488952352. Okay, everybody get that? Okay. Now, one of the things, we're going to actually have Excel just calculate it right here, but before we do that, go down here to the bottom of the spreadsheet, click on sheet 1. This is a nice little mortgage constant schedule. So we've got 5-year, 10-year, 15, 20, 25-year, 30-year loans, and then over here on the left-hand side, interest rates ranging from 1%, I think, to maybe, I don't know, 10% or so, 12%, okay? So that you should be able to go and look at any one of these and sort of get a sense for that is what the mortgage constant is, okay? But we don't actually have to use that table. It's just there just so that it's just kind of a frame of reference to kind of, if you want to kind of play around with it a little bit, you can. So let's go back over here, and also, but it does help you out in the sense that it actually gives you the formula that you're going to need to use to calculate whatever that mortgage constant is, okay? So, let's go back. All right, so equal PMT, all right? So now, our rate is going to be 5%, but divided by 12, since this is going to be on a monthly basis but annualized, okay? And then our number of periods is going to be 15 times 12, comma, and then 1 is going to be the dollar amount of the loan, and then there's no future value, and 0 is going to be the type, so we should be able to kind of close this thing off. Let's see, whoops, I need to make that a positive number. Okay, so that's our monthly mortgage constant as it is here. Okay, so that should match up with the first number that we got over there, the 790,793, okay? All right, now we need to multiply it by 12. Okay, so once we've got all that, just be able to multiply by 12. All right, now it should match the second number over there, the 0.09489, blah, 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 okay? Just put a negative in front of the payment.
Can we show the formula again?
Yep.
How do I make Excel show me more decimals without I do the dot?
Well, you can, well,
Why do you make it divided by 12, I guess?
because it's going to be a monthly payment, but yet you're going to annualize it.
Okay.
Because if you don't divide by, like for example, if you don't divide this by 12 and you don't multiply this by 12, it's going to give you an annual payment number, but it's going to be monthly based on annual compounding. We want to make sure that it's based on monthly compounding. Because there is a little bit of a difference. Okay. All right, everybody got that? All right, let's move forward. Okay, so now it's just a matter of multiplying those two numbers together, all right? So take your permanent mortgage, 800,000, times the analyzed mortgage constant, and then that should populate cell B9. Okay, 75, 916, 19, okay, matches up.
You do it again, I missed what you just said.
Okay. In the event that you do fall behind, okay, keep in mind what I said earlier. All you should have to do is just look over here on the left-hand column and see what you're adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing. So, because it's for the most part, with the exception of the mortgage constant, everything else is just adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. So for that cell, all we're doing is just doing what it says here. We're multiplying the permanent mortgage of 800,000 times the annual mortgage constant to give us the cash required for our debt service on a monthly basis. Or, well, in this case, annual basis, total.
I get an error, it says inconsistent formula.
In which cell?
I got the
B8.
same.
B8.
Yeah, I have your number, but I have that.
You use a negative?
I did it.
DMT.
Yeah. I have the same number you have, it just has a little exclamation mark that says it's an inconsistent formula.
Don't worry about it. As long as it's the same number,
Yeah,
don't worry about
it's the
it.
same.
Sometimes it'll populate with weird stuff like that.
You put the type thing that you didn't put?
You don't need to put it because it's not, it'll automatically assume it's beginning of the period, or I'm sorry, end of the period. Okay. One of the things, if you can sort of see up here, but obviously on your own screen, it has the future value and the type both in brackets. anytime Excel has something like that in brackets, it just means it's optional, okay?
So that dollar's option? No, that dollar's not optional.
So the future value is optional, the type is optional. Because many times your future value is going to be 0, and the type is almost always going to be end of the period.
Yes.
Okay, somebody had a question? Okay, all right, let's move forward. All right, so now that we've got our annual debt service, okay, in this case of $75,916.19, then what we're doing is we're saying, okay, what does that mean that we need to generate on an annual basis in net operating income in order to keep the lender happy? Okay, well, how do we keep the lender happy is having a 1.3 debt service coverage ratio. In other words, they are saying we want a 30% cushion between whatever payments that you're making us and whatever your income is. Okay, so that's the reason why now you would take the 75,916.19, multiply it by the 1.3, and then that will give us our required annual net operating income. Which would be $98,691.04. Okay? All right, good?
So if we had 98,500, no.
I don't know how you would get that.
No, I'm saying if you had a NOI of 98,500,
It wouldn't load it.
you could not get this low.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Okay. I thought you were asking if it gave you that.
Oh,
Okay,
no,
okay,
I did it
okay.
earlier.
All right, so, yeah, her question was, if the property were only generating a net operating income of, let's say, 98,500, that would not be sufficient income to make the lender happy. Okay? That's what you're saying. Okay, moving forward. All right, now then, the next one, I just, once again, just give to you, estimated operating expenses not passed through to the tenants. So in other words, what this means is these are hard operating expenses that you as the property owner are paying out of your pocket, not expenses that you're basically passing through to your tenants for them to pay. Okay? So an example, would be, let's say, I don't know, property taxes, possibly, depending on the kind of lease that you have. You may be continuing to pay those out of your own pocket as the property owner for whatever reasons. But yet, in terms of utilities, you may get billed for it, but you pass that on to the tenant and let them write the check for the utilities. So this is just simply the hard money that you as the property owner would be paying out of your back pocket for this property. Okay, make sense? Okay. So depending on the kind of lease that you have on this property, that number can be really high or 0. Okay, just depending on how you have it structured. All right, so in this case, now what we're doing is we're backing into what is the required effective gross income that we need on this property. So all you're really doing is just adding those two numbers together, all right? You get $148,691.04 as your required effective gross income, which is the real hard dollars sort of coming through your front door that are being deposited into some sort of a bank account to be spent, okay? Then from there, we say, okay, what is our expected occupancy rate for this property? In this case, should be pretty good, about 85%. So all we do is we take and then divide our effective gross income by 85%. And that gives us the required gross revenue that the property would need to generate. Okay? In other words, this is the effective, we're working backwards. Okay, so those of you that are familiar with our cash flow model, normally we work the other direction. We work from the income down to expenses and come up with NOI. Here, we're flipping it and we're basically working the opposite direction. So this is now telling us this is the raw cash that the property would technically have to generate before any sort of vacancy rates that would be applied. So all you're going to do is take this number, now divide it by however many square feet you have. And so $17.49 would be the rental rate per square foot per year that you would need to charge for this property in order to meet all of your financial obligations with your lender. Okay? Does that make sense? So, simple question. If that is the threshold, $17.49. So if market rental rates, in other words, I were to go out in the market, I were to look at similar products as this, if the market rental rate for those products is, let's say, $20 a square foot, then what is this telling me?
We're good.
To do it.
We should probably do this project because we've got enough space between what we would require and what the market is generating in terms of rental rates that it makes sense for us to move forward. But on the flip side, if the market rental rates for this type of product are $15 a square foot, then we would be hard pressed to do this project and to make it work. Now, can we possibly go in, make some adjustments? Yeah. You know, but they've got to be realistic. We can't just, go and try to force fit, the round hole in the square, or, you know what I'm saying. The round peg in the square hole, okay? So what you can do, I mean, just like a simple thing, if you wanted to make things more feasible, as I was saying earlier about the operating expenses. Well, what if we could pass more of that, on to the tenants and we pay less as the property owner? Let's just say we kick it down to 0, see what happens. Boom, okay? By doing that, getting rid of all those operating expenses that we're having to pay as the property owner, forcing them all on the tenants, that means we only have to generate $11.61 in rent. But now here's the thing. That's $11.61, pretty much in this sense, that is going to be a triple net, sort of rental rate. Whereas the other may have been more of a gross rental rate or certainly, not really a triple net. So that's going to make a difference in terms of how you market the project too, but you also need to the reason I'm talking about this and mentioning this is that you need to look at what the other products within the market are doing. Okay, if they're all triple net and they're passing all of the expenses on to the tenants, then you need to probably evaluate your project in the same way, unless there's some reason as to why you might be able to do things differently. But this also creates problems. Because even with all of our wonderful technology and all the things that are sort of out there, sometimes, especially on smaller properties, it can get really confusing whenever somebody starts quoting a rental rate. They're not necessarily fully aware of what that really means. In terms of that $11.61 as a triple net, as a tenant, I'm just thinking, okay, I'm going to pay that amount a month, and that's pretty much it. I'm not realizing, oh, I may have to pay property taxes, I may have to pay, management fees, I may have to pay, all sorts of, utilities and a whole assortment of other things, on top of that. And so, your effective rental rate is going to be substantially higher than that. Does that make sense? Yep, Jim.
This gets you down to a square foot price, but you could easily tweak this model, like for hotels, to make it a per room price.
Of course you could.
Or a per night price.
Absolutely.
Divided by 365, to be per night. Have you ever seen that done?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I mean, this is the fundamental. This is the baby steps model. Okay, this is then where you take this foundation and blow it up into as complicated of a model as you need. But these are the fundamentals. Okay, this just gets you down to something that you can begin to kind of conceptualize and say, okay, well, what can I potentially tweak or have control over, in terms of, like, for example, another thing would be, what if I'm able to get a better deal on the interest rate? What effect might that have? Well, let's say that we get a 0% interest rate. Well, That means now we only have to get $8 and 16 cents a square foot. Okay? So my point being is every developer, investor, is going to have their own set of criteria, making up those variables. Because like, for example, you may have a developer who's also in the construction business. Well, if that's the case, they may be able to shave off some money on the construction cost that you're having to pay, in essence, part of their profit or overhead. Okay? You may have a situation of where that you have a better relationship with your lender than maybe somebody else does, so you're able to get maybe an 85 or 90% loan-to-value ratio, where they're maybe only able to get a 60% loan-to-value ratio. Same sort of thing on the interest rate and the term. That you may get a better deal than somebody else. Well, but it's all those things taken in tandem that ultimately are going to say what your feasibility is going to be for this project. Because it's not going to be the same for every single person. Because, Angelo may have this sweetheart deal with the local lender where he's able to get a ridiculously low interest rate, below market, financing, but you don't have that relationship. But what you do have is maybe you have the ability to have lower construction costs because you own your own construction company. Well, he doesn't have that. You follow me?
Sure.
So that's the beauty of this model is that you can go in and based upon your unique circumstances be able to populate this. Okay? And as you can see, it can potentially have a huge effect on what that required rental rate would need to be. Okay, make sense?
Yeah.
So let's just put this back for a second to 5% there, and put the 50,000 back here. Oops. All right, to get it back to the 1749. So even something as simple as looking at our land cost. Okay. So Woody thinks we need to have higher land cost, and I don't necessarily disagree. So let's say we make those 500,000. All right, well, there you go. Just by adding in that extra, $250,000 on our site acquisition cost, then that jumps up our required rental rate by, a couple of dollars. Okay, does everybody see that? Understand what I'm trying to get at? That's the beauty of this sort of a model. It's a quick and easy way to determine immediate, kind of financial feasibility. Okay. All right, so before we move on to the next one, and kind of any questions on this piece, please ask questions. This would be now the time to do it. Where do you get construction cost? Well, I sent you a nice little link with the spreadsheet of one of the free sites for construction. So let's take a look at that if we can.
Yeah, but I was.
Assuming that will pull up in my mail. Yep. So in the email that I sent you, there's a little link here.
Yeah, it is.
And of course, I'm not looking through the internet.
I'll get the link. Let's see my computer. My other computer's killing I got a new computer. Well, it's drinking her crazy. It's drinking myself.
Is this thing maintained like the costs are adjusted all the time?
Well, theoretically, yes.
And where do they get the cost?
Well, let me talk about that. Hold on, let me get all this stuff out of here so we can see it. Okay, so this one, as I said, is a very basic cost estimator. Now, one of the predominant sources for all construction information, you've heard of companies like RS Means, maybe. You've heard of Marshall Swift. Well, those are two of the big ones that exist out there that what they do is basically they partner with contractors, developers all over the country and ultimately have them submit in what their construction costs are so that in essence they're able to then come up with what are the averages for different property types and within different regions and then keep track of that on a regular, consistent basis and constantly update it, okay? Now, for this one specifically, I don't know how often it's updated or, but at least it gets you something, okay? In terms, and the reason I say that is because, like, RSM and Marshall, they charge a lot of money for these services, okay? It's not a cheap thing to subscribe to get access to all of that. So that's why this one is just a nice, easy thing for you guys to be able to use. And for most of us, they're looking at this from a developer's point of view and not necessarily getting into all the nitty-gritty detail of the construction piece, then this is a good foundation. So let's just sort of tinker around with this just for a couple of minutes. So you look up here, we select building type. It gives you a lot of different choices: apartments, banks, churches, blah, 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 office, retail. So let's just say that we take, I don't know, let's just pick retail. All right? And then project location, you can either use a national average, or then they have it broken out by state and city. So Fort Lauderdale happens to be there, so pick that. And in this case, okay, lump sum, okay, cost index, okay, so basically it's middle value. Let's take that. Square feet, 10,000. All right, oops. And then we can go in overhead, that's good enough. 5% profit, minus 1%. So anyway, long story short, this gives us then an estimate for the project with everything all inclusive of about $1 million, okay? So on a per square foot basis, what does that equate to, at least in terms of construction cost? $101. Now, what it doesn't give you is the land cost. This is just the building cost, just the construction cost. So whatever your land is, then you would add that to this number. Does that make sense? Okay, but it's a quick and dirty one, just to at least give you some sort of a ballpark idea. So those of you that have no background in this whatsoever can at least start with something that's at least remotely reasonable. Okay, so that you're not saying, oh, well, it should be $500 a square foot, or it should be $10 a square foot, or whatever. You at least have some foundation in reality.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's, I mean, pretty on money for what we've seen for like projects.
Well, it's just for fun. Let's just change it from, we'll leave everything else the same. We'll change it to office to see if it changes that much. And it doesn't look like, unless, oh, here we go. Yeah, there we go. It went down a little bit for office compared to retail. Or it's a 1 to 3 story office. Okay, let's go to apartments, 1 to 3 story. Even a little bit cheaper. Okay. But anyway, you get the reality. It doesn't require that much, effort and skill to be able to use that.
I don't think you're building a Fort Lauderdale for $60.
I'm sorry?
I don't think you're building a Fort Lauderdale for $60 a square foot.
Yeah.
Well,
Unless you don't have any labor. Just saying.
Well, it says you can do it based on location.
It says median too.
yeah.
It is based on location. It is based on
You can do high. You can put it in high cost.
See what comes up with high.
Yeah, high index probably.
I have it, that's the
It makes an adjustment for high, doesn't it?
As I said, I am not making any guarantees
No, but
about
if you
this,
put high,
other
it's
than,
close.
at least it's a ballpark number.
Yeah.
Okay, and my suspicion is that Florida would have higher construction costs than a lot of other areas.
What are the overhead profit and bonding? How do you calculate?
Well,
That's a given.
this is gonna be a given, but it's, in this case, you're just sort of, saying that overhead is just going to be, what are all of those other expenses that you have administratively to run your business, to pay your employees, that sort of thing. And then above and beyond that, then the profit is just obviously what it sounds like, that of whatever the total project cost is. If it's basically $100,000, it's the total project cost, 5% would be allocated to profit, so you get $5,000 profit.
Would that be like your developer profit kind of thing?
And that,
Or
well,
would it be
it would be, in this case, this is purely on the construction piece.
So this doesn't include anything
Only if you don't work.
that would need to be done to the land?
No, this is purely the building cost.
Materials.
Not the terraforming and all that?
No.
Okay.
This is purely the building.
Not even architectural.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, this is just, you know, bare basic, you know,
Gotcha.
run of the mill.
Right,
That number makes sense,
Okay? All right. Other comments or questions about this? Yes?
So we're looking at it from the builder's point of view?
Well, you're looking at it just in the sense of, okay, if I want to build a 1 to 3 story apartment building in Fort Lauderdale, and basically we want to skew it a little bit on the higher end on a per square foot basis, not including land, you know, $78. Now, my suspicion is, if we all of a sudden make that like a high rise, like 8 to 24 stories, it's going to be a much higher number because you've got more steel involved. Yeah, $130 a square foot. Okay, these high rises cost a heck of a lot more money to build than obviously a low rise on a per square foot basis.
Save on the land.
Well, you save on the land, in one sense, you get more expensive land, but
I mean, it's yes, it's more expensive per square foot, but you don't need as much land if you have a high rise.
right. Okay, all right, make sense?
Well, they're gonna charge you by the unit. By the-
Okay. Other thoughts, comments, observations on this?
For land costs, you might go to what, the county appraiser's website?
That would be one location to at least get some ballpark information, but also the service that I gave you guys, the Vista, most of you have access to that or should have access to that. And you should be able to go on there and look at most recent sales as well. Okay, all right, moving forward.
For certain, yeah, development too.
Okay,
Nobody will leave that.
all right, we good? Yes? Okay. Okay, let's go down the bottom of the spreadsheet for the backdoor approach. Okay, this one probably makes or is going to probably make a little bit more sense because it sort of follows the direction of the pro forma. Okay, in terms of kind of income down to expenses and so forth. Okay, so we're basically doing the same project. It's just that we're going at it from the opposite direction. Okay, and so in this case, starting off with, this is going to put all the inputs in. Oops. So 10,000, 1,750. Okay, occupancy of 85%. Estimated operating expenses not passed through. Okay. 1.3 for the debt service coverage ratio. Interest rate 5%. 15 years. And home value 80%. And estimated construction cost $750,000. Okay, so working on it from this angle, those are the input variables that we need. Okay, and then we're ultimately really solving for the site acquisition cost or the land component, but also then we're going to be kind of using that information to populate our spreadsheet down below. So right now, okay, here are all of your inputs. Now see if you can build out the rest of the model on your own. You've got all of the operators over here on the side, so you should know what you need to add and subtract, multiply, and divide. See if you can do it. Give you 5 minutes.
B29 is formatted as a currency. By accident. It's not a- Oh, you understand?
Okay, so let's just see if we can go ahead and do this real quick. All right, so 10,000 times 1750. Okay, gives us 175,000 as our required potential gross income. Okay, multiply that by the 85% occupancy rate. It's 148,750. Okay, then we're going to subtract out the operating expenses from the effective gross. Okay. Then, down here to get our annualized mortgage constant, same thing that we did previously, which is equal PMT, open parentheses, take our rate, divided by 12, comma, our term, multiplied by 12, comma, $1 as our present value, close parentheses, start with that. Then we need to make that a positive number, so put the negative sign in front of it. Whoops. And then multiply it by 12 to annualize it. And as Ryan pointed out, one reason I got formatted as a currency, just go ahead and make it a carry it out here. Got the decimals. Okay. All right. All right. So once we've got that, then going down to get the maximum supportable development cost. This one is a little bit more involved, not really complicated. Just take the expected net operating income divided by the debt service, divided by the annual mortgage constant, divided by the loan to value, and that gives you the maximum supportable cost. So just go up. You start with the 98,750, divide it by the 1.3, divided by the mortgage constant, and divided by the loan to value ratio. Okay? And then we get $1,597.37, which is the total project cost. Now it's almost $600 over what it was before, but once again, because of rounding, okay? Because keep in mind, I think the actual rental rate for above was $17.49. Here we rounded it off to $17.50, okay? Just make a little bit of a difference.
Can you show your
Okay, then we're going to just simply subtract out the 750. So our land cost would be $250,597. So now which one were you asking about?
B31.
B31. Okay, so B31 is simply equal B27 divided by B28 divided by B29 divided by B30. Just saves us from having to do a bunch of extra steps. I mean, if you think about it logically, it makes sense, but it's just combining it into one simple sort of equation. Okay. All right, everybody cool with that? I don't think that one requires as much explanation because obviously it's just a flip of the other one. But any questions about it? Let's just for fun.
I have one, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Right back where you added, you divided by 12, multiplied by 12. Can you quickly explain that again? Why you did that, so I don't forget to do it next time.
So what you're doing is you're basically saying, all right, we've got expected, let's just do it on the board. It's probably the simplest way to work through it. So, get my calculator with me. So we start out with the 98,750, right? And that is our NOI. So the first step is we're going to divide that by our debt service coverage ratio, okay? Well, our debt service coverage ratio is 1.3, okay? So that's going to be the first step. 98,750 divided by 1.3. So that gives us 75,961.54, which would be, in essence, our maximum annual debt service number that we found in the front door approach. Okay, but we don't really need to just show that. We can just kind of continue on with that and say, okay, we get that number. Then we divide it by, in this case, the mortgage constant, okay, of the, somebody read that number off to me, 0.09.
489,5235.
Okay, so let's do that. Okay, and when we do that, that's our mortgage constant. That gives us basically our loan amount of $800,477.90. So that's our, now due to rounding, it's not 800,000 like the one above, but basically that's what it is, okay? Then once we've got our loan amount, then the final thing that we divide it by is the loan to value ratio of 80%. Okay, and that is going to give us basically the overall value of the project. Okay, so divided by 0.8. So the overall value of the project of the $1,597,3738 is the overall value of the project. Okay, make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that wasn't my question. I was trying to figure out why in the annualized mortgage constant, why in there you go, I just missed it where it's,
In the
divided by
formula.
12 in the formula. Yeah, so you divide and you multiply by 12.
Right, because what you're doing is you're basically, you're wanting it to be a monthly number, monthly compounding, but you want to annualize it. And so in order to do that, like for example, let me just show you something, okay? So write down, okay, so if we show that the number, we've got it right up here, okay? So that is the annual mortgage constant based on monthly payments, okay? All right, so let's go over and let's adjust this.
Okay, so now you're trying to get.
Now we're going to do it on an annual.
Got it, so you need to multiply.
So we're going to get rid of all the divided by 12, all the multiplied by 12, and the multiplied by 12, okay? Now look at the number we get. Somebody read the number out to me.
0963422
Okay, so you see that the number is different, okay? Because this is the annual
Yeah.
mortgage constant with annual payments. Okay?
For the sake of what we're learning, how we keep it at monthly?
Yes. Because monthly is more accurate.
Right.
All right, go back. Fix that real quick. Okay. All right, other questions? Woody, Chris?
Well, when I first started in my career, I tried to sell industrial property. We were asking like $6 million for it to this Prologis. So they came back and they said, "Listen, we'd love to pay you $6 million, but in our pro forma, we're only going to pay you $10 a square foot on the buildable space. That's what we allocate." And early on, I learned to do it back. You got to do it, everything backwards, because then you get a really good deal for what you're doing. So we ended up selling the property to them, but only what worked in their. We still made a ton of money in their pro forma. And then this is used every day.
Right. Okay. Other questions, thoughts, observations? Okay.
Have you seen other models that are quick and dirty like this?
This is probably about as quick and dirty that you can do that's reasonably accurate. I mean, you can estimate all sorts of, I mean, like for example, I mean, if you pretty much know that you're getting a certain dollar per square foot, then you can probably correlate that with what construction cost would be per square foot, and probably say a simple relationship of, and that's actually one of the things that we're going to kind of, well, let me just sort of show you what I'm talking about. So if we come down here, and the construction cost per square foot would basically be taking, oops, in this case, got, where is it? Size. Okay, so it'd be 750,000 divided by 1, or divided by 10,000. Okay, so basically $75 per square foot is our construction cost. So what we could say, if we want to do like a really down and dirty kind of analysis just on the construction cost relative to the price per square foot of the rental rate, is you can sort of say, all right, $75 of construction cost divided by $17.50 rent, and that would give you kind of an index of like 4.28. So you could say, all right, I mean, it's in very simple terms, that if you've got similar sort of projects, that you can just kind of say, all right, look, I need, in order for this thing to work, I need my my construction cost to be somewhat less than 4.3 of my rent. And that's the only other way that you can really just kind of, but you would have to know all of the other features within the model to be able to make sure that you can kind of lock in on something like that. But I mean, that's the sort of thing that, people who've been doing this for years for a particular product type, they know what their financing is, they know what the rate of return is they need, they know all of that. And so instantly they can just sort of, in the back of their head say, not gonna work, or this is gonna be a home run, or, and without necessarily having to go through, every little step.
Sure.
But, for the most part, it's the sort of thing that as long as you've got these few key pieces of information, then you can instantly, determine whether the project makes sense or not. Okay?
Yeah, this is the nuts and bolts of it.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, it really, I mean, this is, if you, can pretty much, commit this sort of thing to memory of being able to kind of work through this and just, kind of easily think about it. I mean, it's a great tool. It really is. Okay. Any questions? Good?
Yourself.
I'm sorry?
$75.
Yeah. So that is construction cost per square foot. So all you're doing there is you're simply taking the, it'll pull up, it's stubborn, B32 divided by B21. Okay.
Oh, I got it. That makes sense.
Now, to pick on Aaron for a minute, okay, coming from the architecture sort of point of view, and then kind of the planning and that sort of thing, see, this is where that from the architecture point of view, you should say, all right, I've got a couple different design options, okay? And I've got one design option that's relatively inexpensive, but I've got another design option that's going to cost some money. But the fundamental question from the financial feasibility perspective, the way we would look at it, not how the designer would look at it, would be, okay, will that design feature allow us to charge more in rent to justify its cost? Does that make sense? So very simply put, just to kind of illustrate what I'm saying here, is that if we kind of go back, let's go back up to the other model here for a second, more so than with this one, since it's a, well, we can do it this way. That's probably better, actually. All right, let's kind of work it this way. So if we needed, this design feature, whatever it is, it's going to cost us an extra $100,000. Okay, so we all of a sudden we go and we increase our construction cost to $850,000. Well, that raises our required rent from $17.49 to now $18.65 a square foot. And so that would be the question, in other words, from the kind of the design perspective is, would that $100,000 feature allow us, whatever it is, I don't know what it is, but would it allow us to then be able to charge, basically a little bit more than $1 extra per square foot? Does that make sense? Now this is the kind of stuff that architects as a general rule hate, because they're saying, how dare you put a price tag on what it is that I'm designing and whatever water feature would be one of those kind of things. But I think it's really fundamentally important that you understand there's that trade-off. I mean, we're looking at it purely from the financial point of view. Okay, design folks look at it from a very, very different lens. I mean, obviously, you're obviously have the design background as well. That okay. Instead of me telling you how you look at it, you tell me how you look at it. So we'll either one of you. Okay, Aaron, you give me your perspective of how you would look at what we were just talking about from a design point of view.
I mean, it depends on the client and what they're looking for. Like, I mean, this immediately.
Okay, so you want to try to please the client. Okay, yeah. That's important. What else?
You want to be able to sell your units fast.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or rent them.
You want to know if the use is even, because like for instance, if we add patio onto a restaurant, that patio comes with extra zoning. You need extra parking spaces. You need extra.
Okay, so there are extra requirements that may be sort of forthcoming. Okay. Anything you want to add to that? And it's kind of a lens of how you would have ordinarily looked at this from a kind of a design point of view?
For me, it's just whenever you have a higher design, you always end up paying more for it. But in the end, you get, in my opinion, a return on investment for it if you put in the money to it.
And that's what this is hopefully trying to get at. It's not always flawless in the sense of being able to quantify precisely. But, all of us have been to different types, different quality of properties, whether they be residential, office, retail, and most of us are fairly able to sort of say, oh, okay, this is a Class A, super high-end quality building. This one is, it's okay, but it's not so great. This one is kind of a mediocre for Class C, and this one just fails outright in terms of the quality of the structure. And most of us can qualitatively kind of make that assessment going in. Well, hopefully, and in most instances, the market begins to kind of reward or penalize, properties with, those features or lack thereof. But the point is, if we can better estimate and understand what the contribution of those future features may be, then that helps us to avoid maybe going too far off the reservation with basically, design features that really aren't going to contribute anything to value, and so it's a tough trade-off, it really is, but at the same time, we've got to be cognizant, because there have been a lot of developers over the years that have lost a lot of money and gone bankrupt because they went over the top of the design, but on the flip side, there's also been ones that have lost money and went out of business because they did a horrible job with design and spent no money and ended up with a product that was boring and bland or, you know, not functional in some way. Okay, so just, I want to just kind of put that in the back of your skulls to think about. Angelo.
So if we were doing this, like for the project, right, would you want us to break out like the construction cost in a different sheet and get more granular?
It depends on what you're trying to achieve with that.
Okay.
I mean, you know, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that because I've been thinking about what your little project for this course is going to be. Obviously, it's the underwriting thing. But for the other class, what I'm thinking I'm going to have you do is something I've never done before, but I think you're going to appreciate it. And it's not going to be, no, it's actually going to be a lot less difficult. Okay, the number one problem that I consistently see with projects, and this is for whether it's capstone projects or any projects that folks do, is they may have the correct numbers, but how they display those numbers are awful. Because an older guy like me sitting back there in the corner, you know, where Nathan is, you know, or, you know, that I'm basically going to be not able to read what you're putting up here on the screen. And so I think what the project I'm going to actually have you do is give everybody the same spreadsheets, the same numbers, but then you're going to have to figure out a way to display it the best. So that people can, and think about what's relevant, what's not relevant, what's useful, not useful, you know, so really from a design perspective. And what I want to do is then whatever format we kind of all agree on was the best formatting of it, and from this point forward, that's what we're going to use in all of the project courses, because all of us are getting tired of trying to sift through the unique little differences that people tend to sort of throw at these things. Because fundamentally, at the end of the day, they're all freaking cash flows, okay? They're all rates of return. They're all, you know, but how that information gets displayed and conveyed is important. And if it just looks like it's just a bunch of gibberish on the screen and no one can read what's actually there, it's pretty much pointless, okay? All right.
Especially when you have those big spreadsheets, you try to crush them into
and that's where you get to summarize. You know, you can have the spreadsheets as supporting material, you know, in the actual bound document, but what you're going to be presenting, you know, to an investor, a lender, a judge, you know, whoever, that information needs to be very easily and visually conveyed in a way that makes sense. You're conveying all the relevant information and you're not going crazy with it. Okay? All right, moving on. All right, any questions? We good? Okay. Now, let's go down to the bottom of this. On my spreadsheet. There we go. We're going to deal with that here in a minute. Okay. Let's go ahead and fill in a couple of the other bits and pieces that we've got. Okay. So in this case, we're going to make some assumptions, and I will kind of go through and explain these here in a minute, but we're going to pop in some growth rates, 4%, 6%, okay. And we're also going to give you the initial value for the other income, $25,000, and operating expenses are going to grow at 4%. Okay, and then as far as our cap rates are going to go, okay. All right, so let's take a look here. We've got two different cap rates up here that we're going to take a look at. Our implied going in cap rate, that's sort of the initial cap rate, and then we're going to look at what we refer to as our project or the reversion cap rate. Whenever we sell the project, what is the cap rate that we're going to get on the deal? Okay, but we're going to come back to that here just in a minute. So hold off on those because we need to do some of the other calculations first before we can actually calculate that. Okay. All right. So let's focus down here on the income statement. All right, so what this is doing is it's giving us a simple little income statement, much like we did the first, day of class or so, when we got our potential gross income, subtracted our vacancy and collection losses, added our other income, get our effective gross income, subtract out our operating expenses, give us our net operating income, subtract our debt service, and get our before tax cash flow. So most all of these numbers for that year one are just going to be pulling down from above, okay? We're not actually going to have to do any real serious calculations on some of this. So we look at year one, all right? We're going to go up and we are going to capture, in this case, cell B23 for our potential gross income, all right? Right, see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then right below that, the vacancy and collection losses. In this case, we've got the $26,250. Now the way that we're going to get that is that we're going to go and we're going to take that potential gross income and we're going to multiply it by 1 minus the 85%.
You don't have to do the equals.
I'm sorry?
You don't have to do the equals.
I put a negative, let's see if that, yeah. And in this case, we obviously want to make that, well, I'm going to make it a positive number only because of the formatting of how I'm going to do this. Okay. Everybody has a little bit of a different style whenever it comes to using these numbers in a pro forma. I tend, in a lot of cases, to make them all positive numbers and then ultimately just use the math that's over here on the left-hand side to kind of determine what the actual values are going to be and whether they're going to be negative or whether they're going to be positive. Okay? So in this case, to get the effective gross income, all we should do is take the 175,000, subtract out the 26,250, add in the other income. Okay, so we end up with 173,750. Yeah. Okay? All right, moving forward. Okay, then we're going to reach up and we're going to grab our operating expenses. So equal and then grab cell B26. Okay. Then calculate our operating income by just simply subtracting out the 50,000 from the 173,750. Okay. And then your net or your annual debt service is already popped in there for you. Okay, so you don't have to do that. And your before tax cash flow is also popped in there for you. Okay? Everybody matching up?
Oh, that would be
So does it matter or not the minus before the?
Well, as long as you're following the operands over here, that will give you the right answer. This is what I'm saying. Everybody has a different style of doing this. My style is, for the most part, to make all of the numbers over here sort of positive, and then I just follow what the operands are over there, and then ultimately come up with what the number is. You can also make these numbers negative. You're still getting the same answer. Okay? All right. So everybody getting the 47,788.46 for their first year before tax cash flow? Yes?
What did we get?
Okay. Help your neighbor if you're not getting it. Okay?
C40. What where's that coming from? It's 50 grand.
Net operating? It's the, yeah, it's 50, it's the 50 bucks. It's not way up there, not way up there, it's 50. It's 50. Dude, your lunch smells pretty good.
Yeah, it's not bad, right?
You good?
Okay. Now what we're assuming is that each of these variables, potential gross income, vacancy and collection losses, other income, and operating expenses, are going to change every year. In this case, we're assuming they're all going up, but they're going up at different rates, okay? We can also make them negative rates if we choose to. But in order to do this, what you're going to do, and I want to see if you can figure it out, but you're basically going to take like 175, and then you're going to do times 1 plus, then capture that rate, close parentheses, and then now you have the number. Okay, the 180,250. So that should be, can we double check? Yep. All right. So I'm going to put that one up there.
Can we drag it across?
Think about it. Make sure that whether it needs to be static or dynamic. Okay? You guys play around with it. I'll give you the first one. See if you can figure out the others. Work with your neighbor if you need to.
I'll put the little,
to go down the list?
the V in the 36. Thank you. Oh,
Oh, 36.
the lock would be 36.
Yeah, and then get the other one.
Wait, 8 mil there. That's more than 100%. Okay.
And the same with the next one, right?
Yep. Follow the same process all the way down. All right? So go ahead and work ahead. Check and see what we did together here in a few minutes.
Let me get the Spanish chalkboard.
That's the best thing I've learned so far. That little lock mechanism, I love that. Because whenever I try to track sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And it makes you crazy trying to fix it. Then you just screw it and all.
Yep. That kind of
You know what I'm saying?
That bothers me too sometimes. It starts dragging the actual numbers instead of the formula, and the formula instead of the numbers.
Yeah. But the B 37 stays.
Oh, yeah, you're probably right, because you have your sale date, you have your sale price.
Ooh, residual value.
Reversion rates.
Growth rates are staying.
All righty. So this is all right. So, question that Woody asked: can we just simply copy over? Well, what we need to do, if we're going to do that, we need to make the B36 a static cell reference, but we can make the C36 dynamic because we do want it to sort of copy over from one to the next, okay? So make that change in the little formula there, just put the dollar signs in front of the B and the 36, okay? And then we should be able then to just drag over, okay? All right.
Oh, there's some.
Yeah.
Martin Petter's that in there.
Okay. Okay, now then, once you've got that one, skip down to the next one. And this one, basically the same sort of thing. You're going to go equal times 1 plus the growth rate. Okay, once you've got it, and just like before, the dollar sign in front of the, in this case, B37, copy it over. Okay, oops, yellow, do it again. All right, then we come down to the next one, same thing. Okay, we're going to go over, capture cell C38 times, open parentheses, 1 plus the growth rate, in this case the 6%, so B38, close the parentheses, go ahead and put the dollar sign in front of the B, dollar sign in front of the 38, same thing, copy over, all right, then in this case, this is a calculation cell, the effective gross income, so this one, all we need to do is just copy over. It's going to copy over everything automatically. So just copy that straight over. Done with that. Okay. Now then, back to this one. Okay, we're going to take the 50,000 times, open parentheses, 1 plus the growth rate, close parentheses, the dollar sign in front of the B, and in front of the 40. Okay, and once you've got that, copy it over. Okay, then the next one is just calculating the operating income, which is just simply subtracting above, but you actually all you have to do is just copy over. All right. On. Copy over. There we go. All right. Okay. Okay. Everybody matching up now?
So there's no growth rate percentage on the one. So what do you said there's.
Okay. The only one. Okay. It's really simple. The only ones that are going to have growth rates attached to them are those lines that have growth rates here.
Yes,
The other ones that are blacked out are simply going to be whatever that number is in that cell copied over.
Gotcha.
Okay? Yep. All right, final little pieces. Okay, so in this case, the reversion cap rate, I think, double check this, how I did this, yep. All right, so I think we actually just give you the reversion cap rate, in this case of 9.3946. Yep. I'll explain why I did that now that I'm trying to remember. All right. And then we take the going in cap rate, which is simply going to be our net operating income. Oops. Divided by the overall project cost. Oops. Hello. Yep. Okay. All right.
So what was that one, Professor?
Okay. So Couple of things. Let's start with the implied going-in cap rate. The 9.8691. All right. If you remember, there. Okay. If you remember, our good friend Irv. Okay. The R is the cap rate. Okay. Now, what we know is our net operating income on this property is $98,750. Okay. In other words, okay, look back at the sheet. What is our net operating income number? It's $98,750. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. You're going to divide that by the value of the property, which in this case is the total amount of $1,597,037. Okay. So the implied cap rate is taking that divided by that gives you the implied cap rate upon the acquisition. So 98,750 divided by 1,597,037 gives us a cap rate of 0.098691 or 9.8691%. Okay? So that is just simply telling us that for this property, whenever we're buying this property, that would be the implied cap rate, okay? Based upon the income it's generating and based upon the overall value of the property, okay? So yet again, another metric to kind of be able, as a smell test, as to whether or not this project makes sense, okay? That in this case, you're saying that you're getting like a 9.86 yield on this property, all right, or the cap rate. All right, everybody cool with that? Yeah, no, I'm coming to that one. Okay. Right now, focus on the implied going-in cap rate. Okay. Now, in this case, the projected reversion, what I did, if my memory serves me correctly, was I was looking at what we could potentially sell the property for at some point 5 years into the future, and then using the year 6 NOI to be able to come up with a projected reversion cap rate. But in this case, I'm sort of flipping it the other way around and saying, what if I desire a 9.39? There's no meaning to this other than that's what I desire my cap rate to be whenever I sell it. I could have easily made that 10%. Okay? And if I made it 10%, that's going to change what I end up having to sell the property for at the end of the 5th year. Okay, so let me go back to what I had it as the 9 point. So this is a given number, 9.3946. Okay. So we come down here. All right, we're going to look at 2 things. All right, the first one, this year 6 business. All right, it's a 5-year project, but this is one of those little nuanced things that I need to explain and you need to understand. Okay? Whenever you're valuing a property from the income approach, the assumption is you are using future income to estimate what the value is today. Okay? And with the case of properties that you're going to sell at the end of a year, you actually are going to use the following year's income to help set a price for today. Okay, does that make sense conceptually? Okay, and so what we're doing is we're basically forecasting not only the 5 years, but in order to be more fundamentally, theoretically accurate, we're going ahead and we're going to forecast what our income would be for year 6 for everything all the way down to our net operating income number. Okay, because that's the number that you use with the cap rate to establish value. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so that's what we do. We end up with a year 6 net operating income of $143,000. Okay, so $143,558.82. All right, and then in this case, since I have given you a projected or what our desired reversion cap rate of this 0.093946.
That was given?
That was given. Yep, that was out of the blue.
Okay.
Okay, so you would take the 143,558.82 divided by 0.093946. And that gives you then the total reversion that you would need to get of $1,528,099.33, which should match up with this. Okay? That's off a penny, but we can live with that. Okay? All right? Does that make sense? Now, so what that number basically allows us to do over here is to say, we got a couple of other little calculations. Now you look at what these other 2 line items are. All right? This line item, which I went ahead and populated the cell for you, but this is the outstanding mortgage balance at the end of year 5. Okay? And then from that, you would subtract that out from the reversion to find out how much you're going to walk away with on a before-tax basis off of this deal. So you would walk away with about $931,000 of, in this case, before-tax cash flow. All right, and we're doing it all in before-tax because in basically this semester we focus almost everything on before-tax. We will do some after-tax later, but for the most part, that's where we're going to kind of stop for this example, is on the before-tax basis. Okay. Does that make sense? So that $931,286 represents the total dollar amount that we would get at the end of year 5 when we sold the property after we subtract out the mortgage balance. Okay? Make sense? Now that's not our profit. That is simply the amount that we get after paying off our mortgage. Because keep in mind, we originally paid $1 million for the property, so the reality is we're not quite getting back what we originally put in it. Okay?
Still gotta pay taxes, too.
Right. Okay? But we've gotten some operating income over that 5-year period. Okay, so let's move on down the page here. Now these numbers, I believe, are already populated for you. Okay? So let's take a look at what they are, though. All right. So in this case, what we're doing is this first column. These are sort of 2 different sets of calculations. So ignore the equity invested column for a moment. Okay? Focus exclusively on the one with 100% as equity invested. So this is, excuse me, making the assumption this is an all cash deal. If it's 100% equity, it's all cash. All right, so that means whoever the investor is, just write a check, okay? No bank financing, nothing, all right? So if that were the case, then their out-of-pocket expenditure at the beginning of this would have been the full price of the project, the $1,597,37, yes? And then each year, they would have gotten the net operating income off of the property, not the before-tax cash flow, but the net operating income, because if there's no debt, then there is no mortgage, okay? So they're getting just the net operating income, which in this case, in that first year, was 123,000. Then the next year, 127, 131, 135, so forth, so on. Okay, make sense? Then the final year, this number is going to represent the year 5 cash flow of the net operating income plus the reversion. Okay, just like we've done in the other class of calculating basically that sale value with that final cash flow. Then it's just a matter of taking all of those, popping it into the internal rate of return function, and so it's telling us if we were to have done this deal as an all cash deal, we would have gotten a 20% rate of return. Not bad. Okay, everybody comfortable with that? Yes or no? But we didn't do an all cash deal. Okay, we did a deal where we put in 20% equity, is what we actually did, and 80% was debt. So now in this column, what we're doing is we're saying, okay, if we put in 20% equity, what would be that dollar amount? Well, you're simply taking the total amount, multiplying it by 20%, so that would be your equity investment, the 200,000. Does that make sense? But the income, or the cash flow that you receive each year, now is going to be substantially less because you're having to pay off the loan with that annual debt service, so the amount that you're actually receiving is the before tax cash flow. Okay, so you drop down a couple of lines, and so the first year, 47,778, the second year, 51,488, and so forth, so on. And then the same thing then applies to the final year cash flow. You're going to have the reversion price, subtract out the mortgage balance, and then whatever's left over, along with that final operating cash flow, will be this 994,649. Okay? Once you've done that, then we can calculate basically a before-tax internal rate of return on your original investment of the 200,000 off of these cash flows, and you're basically getting double, more than double, the rate of return. And the reason is because you're leveraged. Okay, you're using basically that debt that is at a relatively low cost relative to the return that you're actually generating with the project itself. Okay, Angela.
Do you know what the Excel function for optimal holding period is?
No.
Can we see what it looks like when you change the percentage of your interest rate compared when you're the investor versus the non-debt versus
Okay,
the
so
debt?
you want to,
Yes, just so you see what happens to the return. From 5 to, instead of 5, 5, turn it to 10, the interest rate. Right in,
yeah, right there, okay.
yeah, right there.
All right, so let's do this.
Your return, it'll show you.
Yeah, I know, I'm just trying to, okay, all right, so the question,
Like a variable
the question is, all right, how much of an impact is this interest rate going to have on your overall return from an equity investor for that 20%? So let's just say we double it, 10%. Okay? Well, what that does, as you can see, that in this particular case, the way the model works, unfortunately, it's counterintuitive, and that's part of the challenge of this. It's correct, but the problem is it's counterintuitive because with that higher interest rate, that means that we have to borrow. We're borrowing less money. We're borrowing more money, we're putting less money in. Okay. So it kind of, it sort of is a counterintuitive result because you would think, oh, it's going to be, but no, it ends up being substantially overall higher relative to that. But if we kept other things sort of equal, then yeah, normally it would. Okay.
I definitely thought that was going to kill your return.
Let's see if we put in a 0% interest rate. Okay, 0% interest rate means we put in more money, and we're getting a slightly maybe higher dollars, but the rate of return.
Because you needed 20%.
Right.
The dollars are
And that's crazy.
Okay.
you're putting more money, but the dollars are staying constant until you
And that may be, hold on here,
It might be one of the plans.
hold on.
Sweet spot.
No, I just thought if you raise the interest rate and you keep everything else equal, obviously you're paying more interest in driving as we charge now.
Okay.
Everything being equal.
All right, but anyway, the point being, let's just sort of, make this sort of, screw this up anymore. Okay. And we're gonna talk a little bit more about the financial leverage aspect and that sort of thing, but does everybody understand what we've done? Anybody have any issues or whatever with this? Okay, now is this completely, is this everything you would ever need to do in terms of the feasibility analysis? No. But it's a good starting point in terms of being able to kind of see what your assumptions are. So, you know, the one thing that we could do over here, like in terms of our growth rates, you know, once again, made those 0% growth rates. Then what we should see is, once again, everything remains flat. Okay? Okay. 3, 4, 6, and 4. Okay, question? Over here? Bullet? Question?
I just realized what it was.
Okay, all right, we good? Okay, so let's do this second quiz. You want to take a quick little 5-minute break before the quiz? Okay, take a quick little 5-minute break before the quiz.
Did you? No. I don't want to piss them off on that. I don't love everything all
Actually, like I say, you get one shot, too. Usually we play like ass in the first half. Today we played good in the first half. And now we didn't score. We might have conceded on this. I tried to. We just gotta get out. I think it's the move.
What is this?
6 seconds. First goal. You'll be taking the test next week. In the locker room. I can't believe what's up with their name. You got it. If they win today, you got it. We Liverpool. He wins. I've been there over there. I didn't know. Like 6, 7 years. I think we all what's the difference really? A game like 30 or 6? You know what I mean? By 20, you have to take the test.
Small town feel.
If you take the test, you're not going to do worse. You're probably not going to do worse. No, you know what I mean? You see through beginning and beginning.
I don't think it's why I think of it. I think it was it's not good. For sure. For sure. You got it. I might show up and be like, it's from here. Every Saturday. No, after this is over.
Crazy happy. I wish I was home watching that on TV, bro. That was really insane. Coaches just flying down from county to county.
That looks me all the time.
You know, teams just like to pass around whole shape. We're trying to do that. We're doing pretty good. We have a better shape.
Take that number. divided by that.
Welcome back. But that's who you know.
I think I'm a fan. It's just the manager. The waiters.
He knows everything.
You should be. You just could definitely. That's fine. Which is hilarious. Chelsea was good. Chelsea was good. Top 3. Who wins the top 3?
I got it.
Well, we've had that.
Ain't it?
Somebody's gonna break their neck on one of these cords. I don't know, but after my last experience, I'm getting a 60, I didn't use it. So we dropped it.
He's really terrible, yeah.
Well, I wanted to practice myself. I'm like, I have to make phone calls. Yeah, hell. Especially for the
I saw the sickest documentary about Vince Carter. The one on Netflix. Yeah. Bro, it's basically Vince Carter and Toronto documentary. It's mostly about Toronto more than it's about.
I heard about it. I don't know if I've seen it maybe a while ago.
I knew he could fly, but like watching it even in replay, I'm like,
His dunks are insane, huh? It's crazy.
out of nowhere, fuck it, I'm gonna fly. Look at the rim, face to face.
Actually,
yeah, it's nuts. He's still playing, right? Yeah, he's on Memphis. He's 40 or something. He's still playing. Yeah. I didn't know he was with T-Mac just before my time.
T-Mac and him were on the Raptors?
Yeah, that's.
Not long. Not long. Then they traded him for like fucking nothing. They got nothing for him. They left. You went to any games?
Yeah, I went to one already. I saw Brandon out there. I just found out I got Golden State tickets.
Oh,
Yeah, we didn't get Lakers.
Lakers are next week or in 2 weeks.
Here's the all the green ones are. We got Sacramento. We just went to Utah, Orlando, Brooklyn, Boston, Memphis. Hey, OKC, Warriors, Toronto.
You want the Raptors one, the 26th?
The 10th March.
I'll see you at the game. Oh, March 10th.
No, we don't have that.
Because, oh yeah, I'm gonna go to that one, the 26th.
I'll see. I mean, it's easy to get tickets because these guys never want to go. None of them. So it's like.
What do you mean these guys? Who are these guys?
My dad split it with 2 other guys, so we get 1 in 3 games. A lot of times. So it's like, because I get a text at like 3:30. You want to go tonight?
I beat them. My partners used to have heat tickets. You still have them. It'd be like 5 o'clock.
Oh, you get
and I put, yeah, no, he goes, he'll call me or he'll come in and say, hey, you want to take Phil to the game? I'm in Miami. My son's in Cooper City. I'm like, I can't do that.
If the bright line was working better.
No, but I mean, you know, if you knew you weren't going to the game 2 days before.
Right.
And these are right behind the heat bench. They're freaking great.
It's a great angle to watch basketball.
Okay, you've got 3 minutes to complete this.
We took time from the last one, I guess.